Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Let's Talk Wednesday. My name is Mel Shanique Collins, and I am the CEO and family advocate of the Grace Agency, where we advocate for families that have child welfare cases. We also help fathers to gain rights to their children through legitimation and other court petitions. And then we also help to connect families to local community resources through our Let's Talk Wednesday. And so, you all, as usual, I am super, super excited to introduce to you a new resource, a new service provider that is in our local community. And I'm just really excited because the reason why we do this Let's Talk Wednesday is just so that we can bring the resources and the services and the knowledge to the community. A lot of times, there are so many different things in the community that can help the people, but they aren't sure of where these services are, how they can get in contact with the people for these services. And so we bring that information to you every single Wednesday. And so today is no different, you all. So today we are going to be speaking with Miss Ivy Capps from Paulding Child Advocacy Center. And she's going to basically just give you a rundown of what her center offers, what type of services they have, and the resources. And you all, this is a very, very important resource. As my background in the Department of Family and Children Services, we had a lot of children that made some disclosures, a lot of trafficking and different things that are going on with children in these days and age. And so this is very important to get this information just in case you run across a family member or, sadly yourself an unfortunate situation where you do have to partake in these services. So without further ado, I am going to allow Miss Ivy Capps to introduce herself. Good afternoon, Miss Ivy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Ms. Collins. This is a nice surprise and something new for me to be able to share about the Child Advocacy Center. I'm going to start with just introducing myself. Excuse me. Again, my name is Ivy Capps, and I've been in this field since 1996. And in some way, form, or fashion with abuse related issues, if you will. I worked in a domestic violence shelter, did helped outreach with sexual assault and domestic violence, helped with worked with an agency that was a contract for CPS in Alabama to help with prevention and intervention. I'm sorry, reunification. And then I've been in the child advocacy world since 2001. And that's kind of where I've kind of stayed. And that's my love, that's my niche. I really do believe that this work is a calling because I got out of it for about a year and a half and I couldn't wait to get back in because that's what I know and that's what I want to do. So I have been with this Paulding Child Advocacy since 2018. And I'm the executive director as well as one of the forensic interviewers. And kind of been doing interviews since '06. So I've moved from Alabama here to Georgia. So still doing direct services, but not as much because I feel like if you're still doing direct services, you don't forget your why. And
Mm-hmm.
you can get bogged down with your admin and they're stressed with all of that and fundraising and all of the things and grants. But if you're not doing direct services at some level, I feel like, or I would probably forget my why. And I don't want to forget.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is so important in the helping profession is not to forget your why because you can very easily become jaded, biased, or you can be burnt out from the work because it is a lot of work and it's not the best stories that we're hearing about when families are coming to us. So absolutely. So tell us more about the Paulding Child Advocacy Center. What is you all's mission in the community? What's your goal?
So, first of all, I want everyone to know that there are child advocacy centers all over the nation, as well as several other countries. It's an international concept. And for those that don't understand why it was created, I'm going to take you back to 1985 ish, where Bud Kramer in Huntsville, Alabama, was a prosecutor. And he was prosecuting these cases, child abuse cases, and was noticing that children were having to talk to a lot of people, up to probably 14 or 20 people before it went to trial. And
Mhm.
every time a child has to relive what they've experienced, it's one thing to physically, mentally, emotionally experience, but then for them to have to say it, that is re-traumatizing that child. So he decided that we have to do better for our children. And so child advocacy centers were developed, and the first one is in Huntsville, Alabama. And what that means is that we get referrals through law enforcement or DFACS here in Georgia, and we can get them court ordered from the judges if needed. That happens. I mean, rarely, but we can accept those. And what that means is that those partners come to our center, and a trained forensic interviewer is the only one in the room, and everyone else is watching that's working the case, and they all get the same statement at the same time. So we're hopefully lessening how many times and how much the child is having to tell over and over and over again. Now they do, if they do disclose something at work, or I mean at school or wherever, then yes, there needs to be a few questions to ask and kind of get the ball rolling, of course. But it's not, hopefully they're not going through a full interview and then coming in here and having to do that again. We have 51 CACs in the state of Georgia, and many of those counties, many of those centers cover many counties. We are fortunate to cover Paulding, but Paulding is a unique county. It covers Rockmart, Villa Rica, Douglasville, Ackworth, Dallas, and Hiram. When I moved here, I was like, oh no, that's Polk County. Oh no, that's Paulding. So it
Mhm.
looks like it just, we had a spot and they just decided to throw a county in the middle of all of these towns. So that's what it was looked like to me as a newcomer to Georgia. But
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we start with advocacy and having them coming in and getting outreach to the family to let them know what to expect when they come into our doors, because CACs all have the same mission, that we are child friendly and neutral, and that we want to help lessen the trauma of children that may have been abused. And so our building ours looks like a little house, and the waiting room has different age levels and ethnicity type toys and books and coloring books and all of the things to help them feel comfortable and to see things that look like them. And then the interviewer introduces, and the interviewer talks to the trained interviewer talks to the child, while our advocates talk to the families. And then we provide trauma focused therapy as well. And at this time, because of some funding cuts, we are using second year um, social work interns that have clinical supervision. And then we're also partnering with an agency that only see our kids for trauma focused type issues. And then we have an advocacy program that is the bomb. I mean, this our one of our advocates, she is on the phone every day, and she is constantly talking to our families and all of the things, and finding resources and connecting, and that's what's really important, because for an interviewer, I mean, I can have talked to a child for 30 minutes, and let's say that's all they needed to talk. But then the family's here for 2 or 3 hours, because now we have to find housing, we may have to find this, we have to find that, all of the things. So um, we don't just interview a child and say, okay, thank you, come back. No, we make sure that they're going to a safe place, wherever that's at, and whatever they're needing. We try to hook all that up before they leave our center. We also do outreach, community fairs. We've had some fundraising in the past. We're looking at doing a big fundraiser in June. Um, and not only do I would like people to donate for us, because we've been here for 20 years.
Mhm.
And so we're doing a fundraiser, 20 years, $20,000 for 20 years. And so that's all on our Facebook page and everything. We've been pushing that and going to run that till June, and then do another fundraiser. But I'm in the community to help other nonprofits and other agencies to succeed, because I think, in my opinion, your community needs to be well. Your community needs to be successful, so that everybody is is better, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, just you giving us a lot of great information. Just to scale back, what is a child advocacy center needed for in the community?
We are, when COVID, we carried letters because we were essential. We were considered frontline. We want children that have disclosed or has been someone's witnessed or abuse of physical, sexual, severe abuse, even witness to violent crimes. We interview children for witnessing murders or other shootings or anything. But we are essential and we are impactful in our community because we're the only one in our community that can uh, provide the child friendly facility, the trained staff that are trauma informed, trauma focused, and trained interviewers to be able to talk to those children to elicit their narrative in their words without leading or suggesting, and them being comfortable. Now, sometimes they're not ready to talk. Disclosure is a process. And then our team talks about how we're going to handle that and what's in the best interest of that family and what's in the best interest of that child.
Okay. And so you said earlier that you all typically will get your referrals from DFACs, or the referrals can come from law enforcement. What about families that they don't have an open case, and they technically don't have any court involvement as of yet, but their child has made a disclosure about, maybe a neighbor down the street or something that happened at school? Are they able to contact you all, or do they have to go through a certain venue if they're wanting their child to be interviewed?
We get phone calls all of the time because the Child Advocacy Center, people who do not understand what our center is, they look at that title and they think we're all inclusive. Um,
Hmm.
but they call and say, I would like for my child to be interviewed. Can you talk to my kid? We unfortunately cannot because the way the protocols and the guidelines and the models are set up is that it has to go through DFACs or law enforcement. And our law
Okay.
enforcement in our counties cross report. So anything, and that's what we would say is, anything any abuse that you know of to a child or a child is disclosed to you, please call the 1-800 number for, child abuse for defects to make a report, or go to your local law enforcement and do a report in that way, and that will get the ball rolling. But
Okay, perfect.
as soon as they come into our center, then our advocacy, our therapy, our referrals. Some advocacy centers have medical components. We use Safe Path in Marietta, and they do medical exams. All of those are free to our families.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, can you give someone who doesn't know what a forensic interviewer is, can you give them a rundown of what that process looks like after you all receive a referral from DFACS or law enforcement?
Okay, first of all, trained interviewers usually in child advocacy centers have degrees either in psychology, social work. It could be human related services, social services. It used to be very clinical, and you had to have a master's in something clinical.
Hmm.
Nowadays, you at least have to have a bachelor's because I've had some awesome social workers that have come to the Child Advocacy Center and decided to be interviewers, great interviewers. Some law enforcement, detectives have decided to just be interviewers and come over to the child advocacy side. But and they go through the first initial training is about 40 hours. I've got about 150 hours in training because I've done some advanced and two different guidelines. There's 5 evidence-based, clinically researched guidelines or models that are across the United States. In Georgia, the most that is used is called Child First. And so when an interviewer is trained and has been working in a child advocacy center, understands the child advocacy center, then they are allowed to come in and be able to start doing interviews. When a family arrives, like I said, the advocacy gets them all, set up and squared away. What we do at our advocacy center is I meet with the team to begin with, just to kind of get what's the bare bones of this? Why is the child here? I mean, we've received a referral, but is there anything else I need to know? I especially want to know if the child has any special needs. what's going on with that. Because then if I have an autistic child, what's going to set them off, what's going to help them de-escalate. I need to know all of those kinds of things. So I talk with the caregiver usually just about those kinds of things.
Okay.
And then as an interviewer, I go out and after talking with the team, introduce myself to the child, hang out there for a little bit. Then I go set the room up. We do not allow toys in the room, but they can have fidgets. We uh, have coloring sheets, or they can play with Play-Doh, and I get the little party size Play-Doh so they can play with it. And we act as if we're still COVID. If you play with that Play-Doh, that is your Play-Doh to take with you. I don't want to have to throw it away, and I don't want to have to try to clean Play-Doh. So,
Mhm.
and then
Right.
yeah, right. So we just kind of, when I get the child in, I orient the room. I let them know that there's cameras. I let them know the team is watching. Um, and part of my job is just to get to know them. And then if there's anything that we need to talk about, this is the room we talk about it in. And then there's some more rules like if you don't understand, please, ask me. If I say something out loud or that you have said incorrectly, please correct me. So you're empowering that child to take on this narrative, if you will, in this conversation back and forth. And they can say it however they need to say things. And sometimes they draw things out. Sometimes they write things out. Sometimes it's an open conversation, back and forth. So whatever helps the child to feel more comfortable. Sometimes they have to come back, especially the littles. Like we usually start about 3 because they can formulate sentences. They have enough words to use of what's happened to them, but the attention span is low. So we already kind of set the tone that the child may come back. Now it's not a 2 interviews. It's we pick up where we left off. So,
Okay.
you know,
Okay. And so after, because I've had to send in plenty forensic interviews, and parents are a little bit confused about, okay, so if my child makes a disclosure, or if my child gets up in there and then says something completely different from what they told me, can you let the community know what is the process if a child makes a disclosure versus if a child doesn't make a disclosure? What's the next steps?
okay. If and sometimes law enforcement is the only ones involved at this time. Sometimes it's only DFACs because
Okay.
jurisdiction may be an issue, which we always say refer to Paulding County Sheriffs because they can do a courtesy. They'll come and have someone sit in, and then they can chain of custody send the the recording to whomever. Um,
Hmm.
but so let's say DFACs and law enforcement are here. There's a child that comes in and they've going to talk about physical abuse. Well, then they start talking about maybe being around drugs or they've witnessed domestic violence and all of the other kinds of things. So depending on the law enforcement, they sometimes keep things kind of close, which that's to build a case and a lot of variables behind that. But they also will ask what the caregiver knew. Okay. And then they will say, well, okay, that's what they disclose. They disclose some more. Next steps, maybe we're going to be talking to the person that hurt them or the things that the child had seen. They're going to go start talking to those. So they kind of walk them through that kind of stuff and then letting them know that they will be back in touch with them, not us, not the interviewer. And because it's really a law enforcement case, it's not, I can't speak for their case. I'm only providing a service. If there is no disclosure and maybe the child is acting out and knows things that they should not be knowing at that age sexually, maybe they're wanting to beat up everybody and nobody knows why, but maybe that someone's been beating up on them. No disclosure. Okay. Well, we'll discuss it. Think maybe, maybe they need to come back and talk again when they feel comfortable. I leave that door open for that child. But I also encourage the caregiver, maybe the child, let's talk about putting them in therapy. And our advocates already been talking about therapy and resources because maybe the child needs to see somebody for 3 months before they'll say anything instead of seeing that interviewer for one time. And then if they make a disclosure in therapy, that therapist is a mandated reporter, they can make that report and then we can come back and do an interview. The interview is technically the evidence that law enforcement uses of the child's statement. So hopefully their child does not have to testify in court. Now they have to be
Okay.
made available by state and federal law because you have a right to face your accuser. But if they're under the age of 14, they do not have to. Most of the time, do not have to testify in front of their person that hurt them, or things that they witnessed around those persons. Um, that's what the interview does. The interviewer introduces that forensic interview, and then they are asked questions for the interview instead of the child.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So now that we are at the end process of them being referred in and them either making a disclosure or not making a disclosure, I seen something that was very interesting on your website that I had never encountered with watching forensic interviews, which was the Crime Victims Compensation Program. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what does that encompass?
Yes, in the state of Georgia, most states have this, but the state of Georgia is crimes. If any family has gone through any kind of violent crime, so you're a mama and your child has witnessed a shooting or something sexual or physical has happened to your child, your family has you qualify for this victim's compensation. Okay, and what this is that we've helped them fill it out. We have them here on site. We give them a caregiver book
Mhm.
that has that application in the back, let them know about their rights. But they can get so much for therapy. They can get money. The parents can get money for lost wages, for mileage, for counseling, for medical. So let's say you have to go to the hospital and you get a full-on rape kit because you're 15 years old instead of just getting a medical where we're just kind of looking to see. Okay, they have to take the child's clothes. Oh, it's right after Christmas, and her favorite tennis shoes that she just got for Christmas has to be put into evidence. That victim's compensation will replace that. Um, and for counseling, it's a last resort. Use your insurance first, that kind of stuff. It's a reimbursement thing. So you may have to pay out of pocket at first, but then they reimburse because you can qualify for that. They even pay for families that have had children that die because of violent crimes. They'll pay so much
Wow.
for funeral expenses as well. And they
So
pay
is
they
this some
pay you, but they'll pay like the funeral home. You know,
Okay, got you, got you. So is this something that can only be given at a child advocacy center, or can families get this information from the courthouse or from law enforcement or, just on their own?
there does have to be a police report, so they do ask for a case number when you're applying for any victim's comp. Now, sometimes our families um, don't need it at the beginning, but then they get over here and they're still. And once they leave us, then if it's going to trial, they have a advocate over at the DA's office, victim witness advocates, and they do pretty much the same thing except help that family get through the court trial and the court process. They can as well help you fill out anything that's needed at that time. There is a cap. Each family member is capped at $15,000. Um, so a lot of that money comes from restitution. So when we have people that are found guilty and they have to pay fines and they have to put money back into the community, it's usually going through that restitution pot so that it comes back around for victims.
Awesome, awesome. And that's a great resource because I've had a lot of families that were in need of that type of compensation, but I had no idea that it was available to them. So that's very great. What are some of the bigger challenges that you face with dealing with families that have been through a lot of trauma? Because obviously if it was good they wouldn't need your assistance, or they would need defects involvement. So what are some big the biggest challenges that you all face?
A lot of some of our adults caregivers sitting in our office here because their child has had something happen to them, and we're doing crisis counseling with them because something had happened to them years ago and they never dealt with it. And so trauma on top of generational trauma, it just adds to all of those ACEs numbers, and then it affects in many different ways. And if you've not learned the red flags, if you've not learned boundaries or how to cope or I have a flashback. What can I do to de escalate myself? If you've not learned all of those things, then you don't know how to recognize it in your own child. And that's not,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying they're bad parents. It's just for whatever reason, a long time ago, they were not given the opportunity and the support to be able to deal with their own trauma of their own abuse. And then now they swore they would never let this happen to their own child. It's come out of their mouths so many times in my office. Now their child is actually, has been abused. That's the biggest thing, is helping them to come to terms with it, and also helping find resources for them. Better late than never. All right, let's everybody get into some trauma focused therapy and be able to learn and be able to heal at their own level, and working their own treatments as well as a family unit. Because I used to do therapy for child advocacy centers, but now it is a lot more family unit oriented. Um, years ago, it wasn't as much. And I felt like I was putting band aids on children and sending them back home into the chaos. Well, the child,
Yes.
that's putting a lot of burden on our children, because they know how to, they've learned the coping skills and the relaxation and all of the things, but the adults around you haven't learned. And so who are you going to listen to? Well, of course, they're going to listen to their adults. So they get thrown back into some chaos, because some of our cases, when they come in here, it's not just one event. Sometimes it is. And those families have everything lined up. They're getting everything taken care of. Sometimes they don't need any resources from us. But then there's those that it's been so much chaos and so many people around that child, and no
Hmm.
structure and lack of knowledge and all of the things coming together and coming to a head where something has happened to a child. And if you're just fixing or helping the child heal and putting them right back in that same situation, you're just putting a band aid on them. So I like that it's more family unit now.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of times, just like you said, parents come in there and they swore that they wouldn't let a certain circumstance happen to their children that happened to them. But if they don't even know how they got into that circumstance, they don't know a trigger, they don't know their own, that they haven't been healed themselves, it's very hard for them to identify certain things that can lead up to that particular circumstance. And so it's really good that you said that, because it's the parents that need that support. Really, children need it
Yeah.
too, but
Yeah.
parents need that support. They need that foundation, so that they can know how to better move forward from whatever the circumstance was. And that will lead to my next question: is what type of, do you all have any type of specific partnerships or resources that you rely on to support children beyond the forensic interview process?
Yes, we partner with Tranquil Life Counseling Center, and they actually see our clients if our interns can't see them here. But also, another challenge I'm going to say, and this is a resource I'm going to say add to that, is children that have been abused and now they are abusing children. So there's a
Mm,
program called Leaps and Bounds at the Georgia Center in Atlanta, and you do not have to go through a forensic interview, but a parent can refer their child. Say you have an older child that is inappropriately touching or doing things to a younger child. This child that is it's problematic sexual behavior, they need help as well before
mm-hmm.
they're older and they get in trouble with the courts. Let's get some services around them as well as the child that is. So to me, they're both victims. They just need different programs. So both is a therapy type, both of it is still working their treatment in their program, but on a different level. Where this one with the leaps and bounds, it's more accountability, and it's more, where did this start? Where did this come from? And learning how to rethink about those things that triggers the inappropriate behaviors. Okay, you're feeling that, you're seeing that, or you're thinking of that. What can we do now instead of going and acting on those feelings and those behaviors? And then the younger child, is going through your trauma focused. So your family maybe have to be separated for a while because they're both working their program. So that's a whole nother level. I haven't found a lot of support for the families that have, you're a mama, you're a daddy, and you got two children, and one's an alleged offender victim and one's a victim.
Mm-hmm.
you're stuck in the middle and you're having to, keep your family together. And sometimes it's not always going to stay that way for a while. And that's a big challenge
Absolutely.
that I see for my parents. And I haven't ever been in that situation, so I can't imagine how they, really, I couldn't imagine the feelings they're going through when they're trying to help both of their child to go through their own programs. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, but we have some mentoring groups out here, Never Alone Foundation. We partner with Family Alliance that we refer to Family Success. So these families that are so overwhelmed, yes, you tell them to go to these online things, click on and apply. Sometimes that's just a whole lot to just, so Family Success is being able to walk those families step by step, because an advocate, yes, she's my social worker, but she's not their social worker. So advocacy, there's a fine line there,
Hmm.
and so
Hmm.
we have these programs in place, allow them to be able to utilize our families to utilize them. And then other counselings like play therapy for younger kids under the age of 5. They do better with play therapy than they do with trauma at first. Those are just a few of the things. And we have a county-wide resource book. It's on Paulding Family Connection, and it's all of these social services, nonprofits, schools, any of those kinds of services that are in our county. If they're part of that collaborative, we have created
Hmm.
a resource book, and it's a QR code. So, you can give, and I have a hard copy in our room, so in our lobby. So if they want to look through and be able to click on, stuff, but, I mean, the thing, it's this thick. You're not going to just print all of that out for everyone because it's not going to,
Right.
everything's not going to be for everyone. But that's a good resource as well.
Okay, awesome. So, what are some ways that you feel like caregivers, parents can identify signs of abuse and take action to protect children? Because some of the key things that you mentioned were that, again, some parents don't know that what the triggers are for what happened to them to lead it to happen to their own children. But also, you talked about parents having a household of the one being the victim, but another child in the household being the victim. And, obviously they weren't able to identify that. So, what are some ways that they can identify abuse and learn how to protect the children?
We do a prevention program here, and we utilize Darkness to Light. It's Stewards of Children, and it
Okay.
has 5 stages in it. And because 1 in 10 children will be abused at some level before they're 18. And first of all, you have to learn the facts. And we actually do this training here at the center. Anybody can come. It's $10 because I want you to pay for the workbook. That's it. And you get a certificate at the end, and it's voluntary. I've had some court ordered. I mean, but we're not here to talk about your stuff. We're just here to talk about how can we learn, how can you look for signs, how can you, so you got to learn the facts. And in this program you're going to learn the facts about what child abuse is, whether it's physical or sexual or other violent crimes. You're going to learn stats. Then we're going to minimize our opportunity. So people that have rules or use boundaries in their thing, like for an example, you have an adult that wants to just go downstairs and just hang out with one kid while everybody else is upstairs. Well, you're not
Mm-hmm.
accusing the person, but you're just saying, we don't allow that in our home. More than one child has to go, or more than one adult and children have to go. We're a unit. um, and so you're minimizing those isolation, those one-on-one kind of situations um, that are not visible to others, easily visible. Now, I have been one of those in the past where a mama forgot that they had to pick their kid up from ball because they thought daddy was doing it. And I knew the folks very well, and I took the child home. This was years ago. Now I'm like, there's a whole thing you kind of you got to take care of yourself, but you also got to take care of those kids as well, and setting those boundaries. So just kind of talking through that and learning that if you need to have that one-on-one conversation with because you're You're a counselor at church. Well, do it like um, in some chairs on the other side of the waiting room, and the parents are waiting on the other side, or they can see you. You know, those kinds of things. They don't have to be able to hear. Um,
Hmm.
and then we talk about it. Talk about it with your kids. People don't want to talk about sexual abuse or their bodies, or and please use words that are not confusing, because
Yes,
children choose their words, and they will say that something is happening to them, but it sounds like something else instead of a sexual act. So you don't have to use the correct terminology, but don't use words that are confusing. And
absolutely.
um, and empowering them. This is your body. Even if it's me, your mama, or your daddy, or whatever. Nobody can make you feel uncomfortable. And you talk about when somebody else is going to be able to look at your body and touch your body when you're in the hospital, when you're sick, those kinds of things. But who is going to be around you? You're never going to be alone with that person. Um, and that's the best defense, is learning that, and about sleepovers, learning about boundaries, where we should sleep, being that active parent, asking those questions, knowing that family. Don't just let a child go and you don't know. Well, we're friends. Well, I don't know that family. That family may be awesome, but I don't know them. And I wouldn't want them to come over
Right.
here if that family didn't know us. So it's just setting those, just stopping for a minute and let's talk about it. Let's learn. Let's get to know people, then move forward. So just slowing it down. And then recognizing the signs. Knowing when your child is feeling uncomfortable and empowering them. And if they can't, then it's your job as that parent to say, and it could be just a tickle game on the feet. Okay. Mr. Miss So and so, my child is obviously getting uncomfortable. Could y'all not play the tickle game anymore? Maybe move and do something else instead. It could be an aunt, uncle, family member. It could be one of your best friends. You're not accusing anybody, but you're setting that limit, and you're setting that boundary, and you're speaking for your child. And that also shows your child, you know what, they got my back. You know, I can go to them and I can talk to them. And if I can't, then they're going to help me. And then the last thing is react responsible. Understanding that, if you will, opening that can of worms, if you do have to make a report, if you do have to, disclose that this child has said something and it's about somebody in your own family, understanding that there are going to be consequences, but knowing that you've got to do the right thing for that child, because that child does not have a voice and they can't do anything about it at this time. You can. And if you
Absolutely.
feel like you're the one that's they feel comfortable with to tell, you have to do something about that. And it's not, oh, let's get the whole family unit together and sit with the person that's done something to them in the same conversation. No, let's think about what we need to do, ask some more questions, kind of stuff, but open ended, don't lead, and then make a report if that's what you need to do, and to be able to help that child.
Absolutely. I mean, you said so many great things, and I really want people to be able to hear this, because one of the things that I used to always see was that people always had this affinity for their families, where the child would disclose something and a lot of the abuse would be a family member or a close family friend, and the family would be like not believing it or a little bit hesitant to move forward with either reporting it. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Just because it's a family member? That's one of the most important things that people need to know, is that it typically is going to be someone that's close because they have access. And so
Yes.
I always try to get that into parents' minds, like, you can tell your child about the neighbor or the person at the grocery store, but you got to tell them about auntie and uncle and cousin so and so, because that's probably where it's going to come from if it does happen. So
Right.
you gave some really, really, really great tips.
Well,
And so go ahead.
not only that, is you're going to help slow down or stop that generational abuse. because it's more the people that you know. 90% of the time, you know the person that's messing with your child, or the child knows that person. It's not stranger danger as much anymore. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it's not near as what it's that inner circle. And so stopping
Absolutely.
that pattern from continuing is very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, that's great information. It really is. Now, I heard earlier you talked about raising $20,000 for 20 years. What are some ways that the community can support your organization, whether through advocacy, volunteering, or this fundraiser?
Well, we do need some volunteers for the fundraiser, and everything will be and that will be coming up on our website pretty soon. And our website is
Okay.
www.pauldingcac.org. And on our website, there are QR codes to show if you want to donate. And then when you donate, you can just say general donation, or you can do the 20 for 20. But not only that, we have things that are grants, or that they're earmarked for, that you can't purchase. So when we have children in here that come in and they've missed lunch, or they've come in right after school. Anybody that knows that they've had a child, they're always going to be hungry in that afternoon. So we always
Mm-hmm.
have snacks and juices, or water, prepackaged snacks for our children. And if mama has to bring all three of them and we're only going to talk to one of them, well, everybody gets a snack, not just that child that we're talking to. And then afterwards, the concept with the Child Advocacy Center, to help them to feel comfortable. Sometimes you get a lovey, you get a little stuffed animal. Not sometimes, you always get you get a choice to get a stuffed animal. And then we've also, over the years, have noticed that, people would love to have blankets, and maybe that's the only blanket they have that they can cover up with at night. So then we've had people
Mm-hmm.
donate new blankets. We have some uh, ladies from the Methodist Church. It's a prayer shawl meeting, and it's different denominations, but they meet at the Methodist Church, and they crochet or they make blankets for us. But we also take those that, the soft fuzzy ones from Walmart or wherever. So some of our teenagers, they would rather have a blanket, or they would rather, so it just gives them a choice. But again, if every child comes in, with a family, they're all going to leave with the same thing. We're not just, singling out that one child. So there's always a need for that. Right now, we are really good with stuffed animals. Blankets are kind of low, and water is really like bottled water. So, and office supplies, packs of copy paper, those kinds of, we're always using paper, that kind of stuff. Um, Paper towels, toilet paper, that kind of stuff. And Yeah, I mean, just stuff like that, just everyday things that we use here in the office. And that's a huge help,
Okay.
because it doesn't have to come out of general money, and then we can use that money for, serving our kids.
Awesome, awesome. And before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to tell the families in the community who may need your services or those who may want your help?
Please just reach out to DFACS, or you can go online and you can make a report there, or you can always go to your local law enforcement. It doesn't matter if you go to Hiram or Dallas or Villa Rica or Rockmart or wherever, or Paulding County sheriffs. Start somewhere where you feel comfortable, and then they can tell you, oh, well, this has got to be a Paulding case, or this is a. But go and do something if you know that your child, or a child around you that you care for, has had something happen to them, or that has had something witnessed, um, because it's important for that trauma to start the healing part immediately, so then when they get over in here when they're older, then they can be more adjusted, and health emotionally healthy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Miss Caps, for sharing so much wealth and knowledge of what the Child Advocacy Center is here for, and the services that you all have to offer. It is a very important service that our community really needs to know about, because we see these cases more times than not about children either witnessing some type of criminal acts or domestic violence or going through sexual abuse. And so thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share with the community about the services that the Paulding Child Advocacy Center has to offer.
Thank you so much for having us.
No problem. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.